How's it going, y'all? It's Turn-Based here, and welcome to a new series on this channel, which is going to be covering every single character's awareness. All awarenesses, 1 through 6, we're going to be ranking them based on the same tier of awareness for each character. So today, we're doing an A1 tier list, and then later we'll do an A2 tier list, A4 tier list, and an A6 tier list. No A3 or 5 because those are literally just stepping stone awarenesses to get an A4 or an A6. It is completely useless to talk about. I mean, if you wanted me to give a quick ranking, it'd be, bad, mid, good. If you have a character that uses the two skills that get buffed by the A3 or 5, it'd be good. If you had a character that used one of them, it'd be mid, and if they didn't use either, it would be bad. So, for example, Joker, his A3, I think, is buffing the skill 3 and the highlight, which would be good because he uses those skills for his damage. And then his A5 would be bad because the skill 1 and skill 2 are basically never used if you're building him right, and especially on his guild boss or his Nightmare Gateway, the SOS boss. That one especially is you have no reason to click skill 1 or skill 3. So with that being said, we're going to be talking about every character today. No 4-star characters, because obviously you should be able to get an A6 4-star character extremely easily, and they're also not even used basically at all anymore in the game, so no point in talking about them. We will be talking about standard characters, and we'll be talking about them from a limited point of view, which means that we don't get a discount based on the fact that you don't have to use limited currency on them. So, maybe Panther has pretty mid or bad awareness, but it's well, you can get it for free, so it's actually not that bad. It's okay, yeah, but that wouldn't be fair. That would kind of make the tier list inconsistent, so we're going to be talking about them pretty harshly, because you would have to assume that you would spend up to 15,000 gems on that awareness. Now, one thing I want to mention, this isn't a pull guide video, because the answer to should I pull an awareness is always, or almost always, no, do not do that. It's not worth pulling copies of a character you already have over a new character. The performance is not that much better. There are a couple cases where, you could definitely pull a character if you had the resources, or pull an awareness if you had the resources, or you could pull awarenesses if you really loved the character. For me, I really like Chord. I like her design. I like the way that she plays with the highlight system, and I think it's really cool. And so I have an A6 Chord, and I really enjoy that. And she's used with a lot of teams. But I don't think pulling an A6 Chord is at all a quote-unquote good idea. It's just I had a lot of extra resources and gems laying around, got a lot of her copies for free, and so I felt like it was worthwhile to invest into her character. Or the Twins, for example. Twins A1 is really, really strong, obviously, because, it really tightens up the rotation, and I use the Twins in every single one of my, SOS bosses or SOS patches. I'll use them on one side. And one of the most used and useful characters in the game, so pulling an A1 is, to me, makes a lot of sense, because I'll get that more than pulling Matoi. I'm probably not ever going to use Matoi, or any characters that I don't pull. I basically never use them. So yeah, maybe it would make sense to pull additional copies of character you use in basically every team. But those are really the only cases where I would say it'd be worth it. If you really like a character, pull it. If you have a ton of extra gems laying around because you skipped a bunch of characters, I mean, that's fine too, but do not, and I mean do not do this, where you're I have to pull a character's A1 because the A1 is good. Just because an character's A1 is good doesn't mean that you should pull a character. And that's one thing about this video that I think it makes for an interesting tier list, where we can analyze these awarenesses kind of independently of how good the character is, based on what it offers for their kit, right? So we're going to be talking about some characters today who are not very good, have been outclassed in the meta, power crept to all hell, and we can look at them and say, well, yeah, maybe the character is bad, but the awareness is actually pretty good, right? The awareness offers good buffs, it offers a good change to the rotation, it's a pretty good awareness. Doesn't mean go pull the character because you need to pull the A1, right? That's not at all what I'm saying. Don't do that. This is just meant to be kind of more of a strength tier list than a value tier list. So just keep that in mind, and do not use this as pull advice. Do not do it, okay? Awesome. Now, before I get into the tier list, I do want to ask one thing of you, and that is if you would please consider subscribing. These tier list videos tend to do way better than a lot of my usual content. for good reason. I mean, my usual content is a little more niche to specifically SOS bossing and like guide content, and not a lot of people either want to watch like a guide about it, or if they do want to watch a guide about it, right, it's only for that one patch, and there's a lot of different reasons for, you know, that content to be a little more niche, a little more specific. That's kind of by design for me, but these tier list videos get a lot more traction, a lot more interactions, there's more discussion around it, longer times, YouTube likes, high watch times, so these videos just reach a wider audience. And the best way for me to grow my channel is to get people who don't always watch my like regular bossing content to stick around for some of the more infrequent, but I would still say regular, long form tier listing or discussion type content, right? That's something that I do kind of in the lulls of patches, and we've got, you know, 3 at least more videos of this type coming up. So if you subscribe, you'll be able to catch my opinions on the A2s, the A4s, and the A6s. You'll get some additional content there. So I would just say, you know, if you wanted to, please consider subscribing. It'd mean a lot to me. Not that, you know, the viewership and the subscriber count is everything for me, but as someone who's a smaller channel, it really helps out. It helps out with my motivation, right? To see people liking my content. I mean, I really appreciate a lot of the nice comments and things that people have said recently. It means a lot to me, but just wanted to put it out there. I don't do a lot of this kind of shilling, like shilling's bad. That sounds bad, but I don't do a lot of the like asking for comments, likes, that kind of stuff. I don't really do that at all. But I'm gonna just say it one time. This is gonna sound so stupid if it doesn't, but I'm pretty sure this video is gonna get a lot more viewership outside of the normal viewership base that I have. And so I'll just put it out there. There's a lot more of this kind of stuff coming your way. So if you like that, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. So with that being said, let's get right into the tier list, and let's start with Riddle. Riddle is a great way for us to begin the tier list because her A1 is shit. It is so bad. It literally only says do or give 15% damage to the party. That's it. Like, it has a little bit of self-buffing involved. Like, I think she gets a personal attack boost, but it's just terrible. Like, it doesn't do anything for the main damage dealer. And that's going to be a common thing that we see with the rest of the Riddle awarenesses, is that they do like maybe a little bit of support for the next character, or like the DPS character, but a lot of the buffing goes to Riddle herself, which like makes no sense for a buffing character. It's like, you're just giving yourself buffs. That's just like, do you want to be a damage dealer or do you want to be a support? It makes no sense. Character's atrocious anyway, so it doesn't matter, but bad awareness, bad, just awful. But I'm not putting it in NA because technically it does something, right? Technically it does give some damage bonus. I would say Rin, on the other hand, does literally nothing because her A1 says gain Meg post soup stack at the beginning of the battle. So now instead of going using skill 1, using skill 3, using skill 1, now you can go using skill 3, then skill 1, then skill 3. It's like it switches the order, which in my opinion is like, there's no reason for that at all, right? There's really no characters that benefit a lot from having that, I would say, like the skill 3 debuffs rather than the skill 1 on the first turn. If anything, if you have a 2-turn DPS dealing more damage on the second turn, you kind of want to use the skill 3 on the second turn. Like, it just is so backwards how it's set up, so it doesn't do anything. It's kind of miserable how bad that A1 is. There is something to be said about getting the Mengpo soup stack at the beginning of the battle. If you have A6, it does matter because when you spend it, you get like a curse damage taken debuff, I think, or maybe it's like a curse damage buff. Regardless, there is something where like the A1 does combo with the A6, but that brings me to a pretty key point here, which is the A6 does not like support the A1 in terms of its value. We're not going to be considering how the later awarenesses change the values of the previous ones. Because if you're thinking about, is the A1 good? Well, you only have access to the A1. You don't have access to the A6, right? If you had access to the A6, you automatically get the A1. So you could, think about the A6 in that context, but you can't do the same for the A1. It doesn't go backwards. It's not how the awarenesses work. You don't get to pick the awareness and pull only that one. So we're not going to consider how the A1 affects our A6. Not going to do that for any of these characters. Just thought I would put it out there just in case. That's not how we're going to be evaluating it. We have to be consistent somehow, right? That's kind of the trick. But the tricky part of this video was trying to make the logic consistent, which is, easier said than done. Next up, we've got Panther, who is going in bad, and that is because it basically is just a 25% party-wide attack boost. And it's more restrictive because it's a one-turn attack boost by 25% when she enters Lavian Rose state. So yeah, maybe she gets a little bit of buffing whenever she has like her big damage turn, but you know, it's not really relevant that she's buffing the whole party because she doesn't act as a sub DPS, she acts as a main DPS. And there's really no other like fire buffers where you want to be dealing a lot of fire damage or like party attack. Like it's not, a lot of these early awarenesses and characters are kind of like they're still figuring out the battle system. Clearly they weren't as bought into like, okay, you have the main DPS where everybody buffs like a lot. It's kind of was like at the beginning of the game, it was more, you know, everybody can deal damage kind of like thing. It's a little goofy. So that makes this A1 bad. It does not really provide a lot of value at all. Technically not useless, but I would say pretty rough. Next up we got Morgana, and Morgana is one of those characters that is useless in terms of their awareness, and the reason for that is because it only offers a healing buff. And there are, you know, like I said, there'll be some characters where that like healing aspect of their kit isn't like, it's not completely ignorable because you do sometimes need sustain, but I mean, A0 Morgana is perfectly, I mean, if you're dying with an A0 Morgana on your squad, it's like, come on, man, really? So it's literally just, okay, we're gonna give you more healing. That doesn't do anything for our scoring, bossing modes, which is, the perspective of this video is from a scoring, bossing, endgame standpoint, not necessarily general content, because yeah, there's reasons for general content to be like, you know, to have value to healers, especially like Marian, for example, but not going to discuss that in this because, like I said, gotta be consistent somehow, and my consistency is going to come from a pretty objective standpoint of like scoring content. Now, Skull, where is he? He is here. And he has, I would say, another bad A1. And the reason for that is because his skill 3 gets a 20% damage boost, which is nice, but the only other thing he gets is a decreased damage taken in changing gear state. So when he uses the skill 3 and then he enters that like charge up turn, he takes less damage, which again, if it's not attack, it's not damage, it's not anything. That's just like a survivability increase. It doesn't do anything, so don't consider it. So this at the end of the day becomes 20% damage increase to skill 3, which is bad. That is just not of a good awareness at all. Now, one thing I guess I should remind you all is there was, in the last video, the weapon video, we did talk about how the different damage buffing values are weighted, in my opinion, right? So you want to see damage amp is like the most important thing because it's like a separate modifier. And then there's also crit rate and crit molt, which are really important, right? Crit rate is kind of king in that sense. So when we have different characters with different types of buffing, characters that have those things like crit rate, crit damage, final amp, that's way more important than like regular damage or attack bonuses. So if this was like 20% final damage amp, that'd be a lot better, but it's not, so it's 20% damage and it is going in bad. Next we have our first limited character, so we should have a good awareness. This should be a good awareness, right? No, it's actually not like that. It's good. It's not bad, but it's not anything spectacular. Actually, I might put this in mid. So what this awareness does is it increases skill damage, which is a separate modifier from regular damage. Skill damage to main target by 30%, and everyone else gets a 10% damage buff. So this makes him a little bit more useful in single target content. He's a little bit more like generalist because he gets more damage in his specific, you know, modes where he does deal damage to like a main target and then he's killing the ads and those ads take more damage. He's dealing more damage to the main party. So, you know, there is some value there, but I would put this actually in mid because the numbers themselves are pretty low, right? 30% and 10% is not that special. It's not super shocking. And because he's like a sweeper, you know, a lot of his content is going to be based on that spread damage and not like the main target damage. So I would say that makes it kind of a mid A1 in terms of how useful it is. Just not really spectacular. Again, skill damage is better than nothing, but we're going to just leave it at that. Next, we're going to talk about Marian. And Marian is going to go in mid or good. What do I want? Because hers is a 20% pierce rate whenever she heals allies. Above max, so pretty much always. This is tough because this is a good effect. And actually when Marian first came out, if you don't recall, there was a lot of people saying like you should definitely pull Marian on her limited banner, which I did, because there was a assumption that Marian was going to come to standard immediately after, and then in the next update you could get her for free, so you could get an A1 R0 Marian for free, and that was like a pretty decent buffer because it's 20% pierce and 25% damage or something like that. So it's good. I might put it in good just because 20% pierce is quite good. That's actually like a good value. So, you know, if there was a DPS that said, you know, A1, 20% pierce, that'd be pretty good, right? So I'm putting that here, not mid. Even though, like, yeah, she doesn't really offer buffing, this kind of adds buffing capabilities to her kit, so I'd put it there. Next up, we've got Bui, or Bui, or whatever you want to call her. You can call her dog shit if you want, because she's bad, but I would say her awareness one is good. This awareness one, I gotta pull this stuff up. I've got so many tabs open on the second screen. This one is crit rate of follow-up attacks by 20% and crit rate by 10% on a follow-up to shocked foes. Now, this feels really strong because it's like, wow, that's a potential 30% crit rate increase. That's like so good. But the problem that I'm seeing with this is she's already dealing a lot of crit with her 4-star weapon has crit up. Her she's like naturally dealing damage to shocked foes. Maybe that's not fair saying that she's overcapping on pierce, or sorry, on crit. Like I just think it's not as good because, like I said, of the crit rate pierce, and also when an ally has player 2, this is like one of her special skills. Yui gets an additional crit rate up whenever she has used her, I think, skill 3. So she is already gonna be dealing a ton of crit rate, so is 30 additional crit rate from an A1 gonna like be the game changer? I don't know. I don't really think so, because I'm pretty sure you could overcap on crit rate without needing that. And so I just think that maybe that makes it only good and not strong, and definitely not must pull because it's all it's doing is crit rate. Additionally, one of the problems is that her personal damage isn't super good, so sometimes she acts more as like a sub DPS, and this isn't actually offering any additional damage to like anyone else other than herself. So I'll put it in good. Again, this is maybe like a little bit of bias of like her actual, because she's so bad, I'm not seeing like a 30% crit rate as a must pull A1, but man, it could be strong. It could, because it's, again, it's a bit, we'll put it in good for now. You know, you can argue that one. I'm fine with that. Next up, we've got Yusuke. Now, Yusuke is he's a little tough to talk about because everyone always says, like, whenever he gets his Mindscape, his kit is, like, much better, but he scales really well off of his awarenesses, so he, like, has really high value awarenesses. I kind of think that that's putting the cart before the horse, and you should look first at what the awarenesses are giving you, not what, like, just having an awareness is going to buff him to the point where, like, his Mindscape is better. His A1 says every 2 times he uses Kenai, he activates 1 more additional counterattack at 70% damage, which really is not that good because you can only use Kenai 3 times in a fight, which means that you're getting 1 additional counterattack that is dealing 70% original damage. So it's already neuter damage. It's really not that much. Like, I feel like that is, I don't know, that's not that good. That just doesn't feel very good to me. It feels kind of bad. Maybe it's more mid than bad. Again, there is something to be said about his Mindscape core scales pretty heavily off of his awarenesses. Like, I don't know the exact values. I guess I can pull them up right now. But for every awareness, he gets an additional 7.5% ice damage, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, and then an additional critical hit effect, so I guess that's critical damage, by another 7.5%. And then his total damage amp is coming up, or is going up by 6%. So, you know, every awareness gives him an additional 6% ice total damage amplification, which is a lot. Like, that's a lot of buffing that's tied to his awareness level. So maybe that makes him mid not good, but I don't want to consider Mindscapes as part of, like, pulling an awareness makes them you know, Mindscape better. Like, maybe I'll do a video about that. Like, how does each character's awareness contribute to their Mindscape value? Like, that could be fun, but for now, we'll put him in bad. He's definitely one of those characters that needs like a 2+. So, next character, we've got Queen. And Queen, her awareness 1 says that she can activate Crash Out at the start of her turn, or at the start of the fight, sorry, and that also buffs her in the Crash Out state, which gives her 50% attack and 35% damage. Pretty good numbers. Activating Crash Out on the first turn is not like the craziest thing, because it's not like it's giving you extra Crash Out turns. That is unless you're playing with Miku, in which, yes, you do actually get those additional Crash Out turns on the last 2 parts of the fight instead of just 1 turn. So I guess maybe that there is something to be said there, and that is not insignificant. And the damage numbers in Crash Out are good, right? 50% attack, 35% damage. It's not crit rate, it's not crit damage, but it's still good enough numbers to where I'm gonna put her in good. Would have liked to see something else there, but it's okay. You know, it's definitely fine. Obviously, we like to see, we always like to see additional damage numbers for DPS characters. That'll put a lot of these DPS characters higher because the awarenesses tend to have better buffing for themselves rather than a support which has lower damage numbers because they have to be more general. Regardless, we'll put her there for now. I say for now, I'm not moving her, but so that'll be where she is for the rest of time. And if you disagree, you're wrong. No, I'm kidding. Next up, we've got Phoebe, who Phoebe is, I think, gonna go in mid. The reason for this is because her awareness says whenever you gain a cocktail, right? So that's when you have the 3 mixer stacks, you get the cocktail. You gain another mixer of the attributes spent to make the cocktail. So it kind of is like, you know, a rebate system of every 3 mixers gives you 1 additional mixer. And then when you activate one of the skills, I believe it's the ones that spend it, so it'd be Tempting Build and Invigorating Blend. You can spend one of your basic or standard cocktails to upgrade it to standard or tailor-made cocktail. Honestly, that's not that impressive to me. This is the best for, like, if you have a party with a lot of different characters with different elements. This actually does become better, because you can get those worse cocktails, and you can increase them to better, like, you can use like a skill 1 or a skill 3 to increase it to, you know, tailor-made or whatever, which will increase the buffing value. Problem is, though, is that you're kind of like, her whole kit is designed around using different type, or using the same type of element. Like, that's the whole point of the character. And when you're not doing that, you shouldn't use her. And so this awareness is meant to be like, I guess it's better for mixed element teams, but just use another navigator. Like, there's no point in using Phoebe then. So I would put that in mid. I don't think it's bad because, you know, there is gaining additional mixers does increase the rate at which she can use her different skills, and there's ways you can use that skill 1 to kind of like alter her rotation to get more buffs on her quicker when you wouldn't be able to otherwise. But it's thin ice between mid and bad, right? There is utility here, and especially if you are using a split team, right? Back whenever it was only her and or Futaba, it was Phoebe and Futaba, and that was it. Like, that was actually a pretty good awareness because you were using like the twins with hers, and it would be like super scuffed if you didn't have that. So that's where we're gonna put her. And then next we have Chord. Now, Chord is one of those characters that has a pretty infamous isn't the right word, but pretty notable A1 that people say is like a must pull, quote unquote. The A1 says you automatically grant co-star to the ally with the highest attack for 3 turns, and then increase the crit rate for that ally by 15%. Now, I don't think this is actually a must pull awareness, because it's only 15% crit rate. Co-star to the highest ally for like 3 turns automatically is not relevant really at A1, or like in terms of almost all of her, like until you get to A6, that's kind of like the only part that it becomes important, because she can use her skill 3 only on turn 2 and beyond if you're below A6, which means that you always have 1 turn to use unison notes. So, you know, the only way that this becomes kind of useful is where like you have A1 and you put distortion or creation and distortion card set on her, where she can use her skill 1 on the first turn, and then it deals like the damage down, and then you use the skill 1 in the second turn, or it deals the defense down on the second turn as well. And then she uses Catchy Hook, and then on turn 4 she can use Unison Notes, and then she can go, you know, Distortion again on the turn before that she's like... This is a lot to like kind of talk through, but essentially it's the using it automatically at the start of the battle is not actually important. It's the crit rate you're paying for. And the reason why I say it's good is because 15% crit rate is really, really high on, like, there already aren't any other characters that give that much crit rate on anything. Like, you know, the 15% is rivaling, like, your Windvast or rivaling your Beachflower Minami, where it's the same, like, tier of crit rate buffing that those skills would be using. So that's why I'm putting it in strong, not must pull, because that crit rate is so important for a lot of different characters. So she'll go there. I would say, you know, if you have a Chord, it is maybe not a bad idea to use like a selector on her A1. That's kind of something that people like to say to do, and I tend to agree. I think that's a viable strategy. Alright, next up is Summer Motoha, or Tropical Motoha, right? Yeah. Summer, I don't know. Whatever. Her A1 says, when Summer Hype is active, increase crit rate, increase damage, and then she increases her Tropical Heart healing counter and gains a blessing on her action, which is like kind of relevant, right? Because she gets buffed by blessing, and then, you know, she can get Tropical Heart earlier, but honestly, I think we're really just looking at this at a 10% crit rate and 25% damage buff whenever Summer Hype is active, which is good because she enters Summer Hype before that she does the skill 3, and then she can use the skill 1 or skill 2 in Summer Hype, so feels pretty good. I'm going to put this in good just because it is crit rate, it is crit damage. Could be strong if the secondary effect was more, and if the numbers were higher, because 10 and 25 is fine. It's not like insane though, and also like kind of just the way that her situation is, where she's not always in Summer Hype, sometimes she's not in it, and so that might like limit the damage potential of the highlight. Might just put it in good, not strong. So she's going there. Next we have the other summer unit from the first version, or like the earlier versions I'd say, and that would be Seaside Tomoko. And this A1 is actually one that's like commonly referred to as being pretty good. It is essentially a 45% defense decrease, because anytime they receive a Summer Reminiscent effect, which I'm pretty sure is just like the resonance that she deals, she's giving defense down. She's also, and this is where I was talking about Morgana earlier with the healing, her skill 2, I believe, yeah, her skill 2 now deals healing to all allies, which isn't like nothing, because sometimes her healing on like just the resonance is not always like the best. So when she has A1, the healing increases her effectiveness in terms of being like a sustainer for really hard-hitting content, but that's not that common for that to be like an issue, so I wouldn't necessarily put it any higher than good for that reason, because 45% defense down is actually a lot. That's actually pretty significant. Unfortunately, it's just, there's really nothing beyond that I'm seeing that's like a value, so we can only kind of pair it with the 20% pierce rate, kind of is like in the same category as that, so that's what I would say. These two are kind of comparable there. Alright, next up we've got an interesting character, and that would be Messa. Now, Messa is a character I'm actually going to be putting into the must-pull category, because his A1 really, really, really supports his kit through the additional Bleed Almighty damage multiplier. It's an additional 1.5 multiplier on his DOT when he has A1. Not to mention, he deals 5 additional bleed stacks whenever he uses that skill 1, so he's getting to max bleed stacks more. And then also, whenever he is using, whenever he's in like the damage mode, so that would be, I think, Ripper mode. Yeah, whenever he's in Ripper mode, he is going to get additional skill damage based on debuffs, which essentially becomes an 80% skill damage. So it's 80% skill damage to a lot of those like non-DOT attacks, and then the DOT is increased by 1.5 times. So that like totally changes the math on the kit, to where before it was like, you know, the DOT wasn't actually dealing a lot of damage. Now those DOT damages do actually deal a lot of damage. Even after the like HP percent nerfs to the bosses that they were adding, it actually still deals enough damage for it to be significant. And so I would put his A1 in one of those tiers of like, if you really like this character and you love to play Messa, you should really consider pulling the A1. Again, I don't think I personally wouldn't, but if you really like the character, you're like, I feel like I want to vertically invest somewhere. It's like, if you like the character, the A1 is extremely, extremely strong. It is a game changer for him. And for that reason, he's going into the must pull category. Again, not saying that makes him a must pull, not saying that makes the A1, like, if you have him, you have to pull the A1. I don't have the A1, I'm fine. But if it's a character that you like and you use a lot, it's a strong consideration. So, our first must pull honor goes to Messa, and then our second must pull honor goes to not Futaba. Even though it is a really great awareness, I'm not putting this in must pull. This one is simply a 12% crit rate increase. Basically, that's what it is. It's 12% crit rate, which is, on a navigator, is good. I do weigh a little bit more these crit rate bonuses on some of these supporting characters because they're so ubiquitous. That makes 12% crit rate on the navigator really, really, really strong. There isn't anything else there going on there, which is like a little sad, but some of the later characters have like, oh, it's like 12% crit rate plus a bonus. But 12% crit rate is still so good that I'm willing to put it in strong. Next up, we've got Cherish, and Cherish is going to reside in the exact same tier as Marian. It's a 20% pierce rate. That's what it is. And same thing here. I like it. I like the pierce rate bonus on these like non-supporting units. Getting awarenesses that give him a little bit more buffing potential. That is really good, and like he becomes really good with Yusuke when he does that. So very simple character to rank there. I hope you are enjoying that, Cherish. That will be the last time you get ranked that high. You are not seeing anything above that ever again. So I hope that you hope that you're liking that. Next up, we've got Haru. Haru's a weird one because she actually has like she's got a tough awareness one to kind of parse, because it feels like a lot of the buffs are good, but they're a little bit more niche than I would like them to be. So for example, she's using her extrasensory aim automatically at the start of her turn whenever a new enemy appears, which really means at the beginning of the fight you get to use a skill 1 automatically, which would be great if you could do that repeatedly, but most often you're not going to be doing that repeatedly. You're just going to be using it once and kind of leaving it and forgetting it. So for that reason, that's not super good. And then based on her target audience stacks, 3 target audience stacks, which means that she gets a 24% attack increase, which is fine, and then a range attack critical rate by 6%, by 18%. It's up to 18%, which is really good because it's 18% crit rate. I think it goes in good. I think that's kind of like same thing with, Tropical Motoha, and the reason for that is crit rate is awesome, attack is not as awesome. Haru's A1 synergizes really well with Miku, and I think I did this kind of thing already with my Miku video where I was like, you can use the A1 to automatically use skill 1 and then skill 3 on the first turn, and then as long as you use the highlight before the turn 2, you can get 3 stack ranged attacks in one fight, which makes her really, really good. I don't know if I'd put it, 18% is a lot of crit rate. It is a lot, and that makes me want to like really increase it. I think I'm just gonna put it in good though, just because it is a little more situational. It's just the range attack, which is a lot of her damage, but it's not all. It's not all. The highlight and the skill 3 and the skill 1, they actually do non-zero levels of damage. So for that reason, I'll put her in good. It's not ubiquitous, not like a ubiquitous crit rate increase, but good enough for me to say it's there. Next up, we have the twins, and I don't even need I don't even need to say anything. Like, that's easiest must pull of my life. Like, if you're not like pulling the twins A1, you're breaking your account. Not really, but it is like a huge. It not only is it a quality of life, it actually is important for the rotation because it allows you to have those buffs from the skill 3 more regularly, because a lot of those buffs are only for 2 turns. So instead of having a 3-turn rotation with 2-turn buffs, it's a 2-turn rotation with 2-turn buffs. So that makes it kind of a must pull. It is, it's just completely insane. And also, don't forget, you get the 2 different types of your facades at the start of the battle too. So there's an additional effect where you're using the skill 3 automatically at the start of the turn, or start of the battle, so you don't have to wait 3 whole turns to get the buffs from the 2 masks as 1. Like, it is really, really strong. It's very, very, like, useful. And I would say it's, like, this is like a must pull if you like the character. This is like a must pull if you care about, like, the game's quote-unquote meta. That's what, like, I would say. Kind of like the only one I would consider out of anyone that we're going to talk about today. Anyways, next up, cross-scale Kotone, and she has a, I think mid. I think we're going to go mid on the awareness one because it is giving you 8% resonance damage for each Springs Vestige stack, and then you also get 1 more Springs Vestige stack each time you use the scale 3. And if you don't remember how this kit works, it's basically whenever that, like, she opens her domain and then the domain closes and then she deals the resonance damage, and that resonance damage is scaled off of the number of Springs Vestige stacks. So it's those stacks plus 4 times a modifier. So 1 more of those stacks, not nothing, that's fine. And then, 40% resonance damage, that's pretty good, but that's kind of all it is. And so, because the scaling on the additional Springs Vestige stack isn't that good, like if the additional stacks of the Vestige was like, giving you like another 100% attack bonus, that'd be fine, but it's only like, I think I'm reading it as 36.4% attack. So, and you're already getting like, what is that? So it's most likely like 4, it's almost like 8 to 10 stacks, like maybe 6. I don't actually know how this works, but yeah, I think it's like the number that you're getting isn't like you're not going from 1 stack to 2, you're going from like 6 stacks to 7 stacks. So not as big of an increase as I'd like to see, and for that reason, you're going in mid. Next up is Howler, and Howler's a character that has pretty good awarenesses and like a good weapon for like a standard character, and most people would say that it's like kind of like her biggest benefit is that as you pull and lose 50/50s and stuff, you get additional awarenesses of her, which makes her kind of like a viable dev buffer for resonance damage dealers. I think her awareness 1 is just good though, and the reason for that is because it's either giving you fire, ice, electric, or wind damage taken up by 36%, or resonance damage taken up by 50%. But you don't get both. You get 1. It's either, if you're doing single target, it's resonance damage taken up to the single target. If you're doing sweeper damage, it's 36% super damage from fire, ice, electric, or wind dealers for 2 turns. Now, on their own, both of those effects are pretty good, I'd say. Even like the 50% resonance damage taken up is really, really good. So that's why I'm not putting it in mid, but if you got both of those effects, that would be really, really strong. But you only get 1, and that means that it is going in good, kind of on the same tier as like these. So as you're noticing, like a lot of these characters have really good, like decent baselines for their awareness 1s, pretty good stats, but sometimes the differences just comes on how applicable it is, and for the teams that she's in, it is very applicable, but it's just kind of, I kind of wish I would get both of those for the price of 1. That'd be much more fun. Next up, Wind Vast, or Tempest Riko, as us English speakers would call it. And her A1 is one of those A1s that people often cite as like must pull or really strong. It like changes the game. Like, I think it's kind of the same thing with Chord, where it is really good actually, and it does have a lot of value, but I'm actually a little lower on it than a lot of people. I think the reason for that is probably because the skill 1 buffs that you're getting, like the additional, or sorry, I meant the A1 buffs. The A1 buffs you're getting on the skill 1 aren't like insane compared to like some of the other buffs you're getting, because it's like this, the A1 specific wording is you're getting 30% crit damage taken up, and anyone can use like the Storm of Petals effect on the skill 1. And then additionally, the skill 2 now makes sweeper allies deal 25% more. So that's kind of like your multi-target skill is the skill 2. It's giving you a 25% attack bonus, and then the skill 1 is a 30% crit bonus. And honestly, those 2 things, that's kind of like Runeteer, right? That's only good, where it's like, yeah, you don't get them at the same time unless you're doing some weird like Miku rotation stuff, and it's fine. They're not bad values, but 30% crit damage is okay. I think I will put it in strong though, just because like it's kind of because of the math with Makoto, if I'm being honest, because he's dealing multi-hit target multi-hit, single target damage that's not wind damage, and that makes Windvast a really great partner with him. And then that skill 1 is totally game-changing for him. It's so much more damage. So I'll put it in strong. It does affect her teams quite significantly, and for me, that's enough for me to say it's good. It's worth pulling. On thin ice, though, you know, if it wasn't that, I kind of feel like the Storm of Petals thing, it should have been any attribute damage from the beginning. I don't know why they did that lock that behind an A1. That kind of feels silly, but oh well. Next up, Matoi, and I hate to do it to you, but we're going to mid. This is a mid character. Very niche character, and niche characters always struggle. And the A1 is really only giving you 30% crit damage taken for two turns. You do get another Extinguish stack, which like that ends up being, I think, a 6% damage increase. So the A1 says 6% damage increase, 30% crit damage taken, which is actually not that. You know what? It's actually not bad. 30% crit is pretty good. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I'll put this in good. That's actually pretty good. Like that's not nothing. I like that actually. 30% crit damage is on par with a lot of our other tiers of buffing. It's tough. And I'll put it in good. I put Cherish in good, so I'll put Matoi in good. Kind of feels similar. Next up, Firecracker Rin. Firecracker Yaoling, Chinese New Year Rin, whatever you want to call her. She has a great A1. I would put it in strong pretty easily. Reason for that is it makes her rotation go from like a 1-3, 1-3, 1-3 kind of thing to like a 1-3-3, or like it's really the 3 is the melee. So it's like 1 plus melee instead of 1 melee, 1 melee. And that's where she's dealing more of her damage. So by the end of the fight, she's getting like an additional hit of the melee damage that she wasn't getting beforehand, which is really good. Not only that, she's also increasing the critical damage of her, like, it's called Yanhua Slash. 40% critical damage increase on that attack, which is a lot. That is a lot of crit damage. So I am putting that in the strong tier. If it was if there was like another thing where it's like, oh, crit rate increase 2, oh, that'd be so good. That'd put in must pull, but nope, just A1. Just put the A1 in strong and go from there. Next up, Violet. I don't know. I think Violet's also got another strong A1 because this one, put her in strong, or first strong assassin, not must pull. This one is extending the duration of dance partner by an additional turn, which means that she can, max out her step stacks, right? Because the character that she's giving the dance partner to, they can deal 2 instances of damage or use 2 skills. So that means that Kasumi will use 2 of the skill 1s, right? The Cinderella glows. So whenever she uses the highlight, she's getting more damage on those step stacks. So that's good, right? Well, problem, because of the twins and Turbo, you could already do that. So it actually isn't like, I would say it would be must pull if that wasn't possible, because it kind of completes her kit in a sense, because it gives her like additional, because there's additional things where it's like if she's getting step stacks while she's in Masquerade, she's getting attack and crit rate, which is huge. So close to being must pull. I would say only it is strong though, because of the fact that the twins and Turbo exist, and we can already do this kind of altered rotation, and it doesn't change anything. But then the question is, well, why is she in strong? That feels like it doesn't have any use then. Well, she's getting 15% crit rate on when she's using Invitation. So add 15% crit rate here. Obviously that's strong. So almost in must pull, keep her in strong. Next up is Turbo. Turbo is another standard character that has really good awarenesses. Well, I'll be the judge of that in some of these later videos. I have an opinion on that, but there's no denying that this is a great A1 because it changes her rotation from, using her, using her like extra turns. She goes from using it on turns 2 and 5 or 1 or 3 and 6 to going 2, 4, and 6. So it makes it a 2-turn DPS rotation. which is important because her power setup, which is the one you want to use in the extra turn, it's only a 2-turn buff. So now we're applying the buff the entire fight. Very important for 2-turn damage dealers or damage dealers that want to have more consistent damage output. It also synergizes really well with things like highlights and navigators because it's reducing cooldowns for those. So that all kind of makes it strong. And then additionally, the thing that, you have to consider as well, 10% pierce rate as well whenever you're using power setup. Pierce rate's really, really good. So now I'm sitting here going, okay, she's offering a lot of pierce rate. She's changing the math on the navigator and the highlights. That's really strong. That's really, really good. Would have loved to see crit, but that would be like greed. That'd be biblical levels of greed to get more crit on that. That'd be must pull. But I want every character to have a must pull A1. Because then I wouldn't, because then I would have to pull them. But makes for more fun gameplay. Next up, poor Crow, poor Akechi. He's got a mid A1. Actually, no, he's got a good A1. I'm trolling. It's good. Reason for this is he changes the deduction, not deduction. He changes the durations of deduction and stratagem to 4 turns, which that means the party damage, and he has the skill 1 and the skill 2, and the skill 1 is the buffing move where he increases party damage by 20%, and the skill 2 is the debuffing damage by increasing the foe's defense by 25%. So that's I would say was a pretty good change, because now you don't have to pick between one or the other. Additionally, decisive scheme, that skill 2, it has an additional effect that says that arrow of perjury, which is that skill 3 that or one of the effects of skill 3, it's increasing the hits on that, and so now you can just use you don't have to be okay, well, I don't get the damage buffing that I would from skill 1, but I'm losing the damage from my skill 3 on Akechi. Now you're getting that back with the skill 1. Additionally, when they're both active, his crit rate is going to be increased by 16%, which increases his personal damage, which his personal damage is pretty bad at A0, so A1 doesn't increase it that much. But he does additionally get another damage dealt buff, a 25% increase, whenever, again, he has both of those deduction and stratagem buffs active, which means that all in all, this is a pretty, it's a simple awareness that is complicated, but is also simple. It's simple at first, and then you look at it, and it actually kind of changes a lot of the math, but then you can narrow it down to Akechi gets 16% crit rate, Akechi and the Mastermind get which is the main DPS, get 25% damage dealt, which is fine, and then he also, if you were only using skill 1, it's adding a 19% damage increase to Arrow of Perjury, adding another hit. It's also decreasing all foes' defense by 25%. Am I going to talk myself into putting this into strong? I think I am, actually. I think this is strong. Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, that's actually way better than I thought, actually, because of I wasn't including the math on the decisive scheme where he's adding the defense down. He's increasing Arrow of Perjury hits. He is increasing the buffs for 4 turns. He gets personal crit rate. That's strong. That is strong. That is strong, and I'm putting him there. So Crow wasn't actually poor. He was actually very rich. But another person who is very rich is Ange, because people are giving Ange all of their money to pull for her, and pull for her A1, because it's very good, because it is 12% crit rate, same thing as this, but it's an additional effect of her cooldown is reduced by 4 actions, so she can use the skill 3 on turn 1 rather than on turn 3, which, for 2-turn DPSs, pretty important, right? Because for that first damage turn, you get the crit rate up, you get the skill 3 buffs up, you can it adds a little survivability, if I'm not mistaken, because you get to no, it doesn't, because it doesn't actually trigger the skill 2, so I imagine I didn't say anything there. I was just waffling about nothing, but that's a good A1. That's an A1 that I would say probably better than the weapon, right? Well, maybe I'm trolling. But anyways, all these navigators A1s are going to be pretty simple to rank because they're just good. They are good, and they offer crit rate, and we love crit rate. Next character on the agenda is Makoto. And Makoto's A1 is one I think is It's good. Is it good or strong? Because it's tough for me to say, because he adds 3 different effects. Melody of Flames is increased to, I think, 5 hits from 4. No, sorry. It's 3 hits to 4. Yeah, so he gets 1 more hit on Melody of Flames, which is a skill 1, so not his big damage skill, unfortunately. He adds 10% pierce rate to his skill 2, which is good, but we don't use the skill 2 at A1. And then he gets 16% crit rate on the big damage skill 3. I think that's good, not like great. And the reason for that is, 1, remember, we can't factor in awarenesses we don't have. A2 automatically activates his skill 2, which means that we would get the 10% pierce buff. So then it would be 10% pierce and 16% crit rate. That's strong, but we don't have that. We only have A1 to go off of. So I would say it is basically a 16% crit rate as an awareness, which that's better for these navigators, because everybody gets a crit rate. For the personal damage dealer, if it's just that, I'm just not as high on personal. Like, if there was something else putting it forward where it's like Melody of Flames adds 20% damage, I'd put it here, but I think I'm putting it in good. Next up, we have Yukari. Yukari is tough because she's pretty niche to some teams, and I think her awareness 1, the value of it changes based on the other characters' awarenesses, because basically the way this one works is that at A1 you can use her skill 3 earlier in the rotation, where she doesn't have to use her skill 1 right off the bat. She can use, like, usually it's like she goes skill 1, skill 2, then 3, 2, 3, 2. But whenever she has A1, she can just use skill 2, then skill 3, then skill 2, then skill 3, or 3, then 2, then 3. Like, she can do it to where she can add an additional 35 Theurgy energy to one of the Theurgy DPS users, or just people who want to care about Theurgy, which is precisely Makoto and Akihiko, which does change some things, right? At A1, you can do things like get sneak in extra Theurgies for Makoto, you can sneak in extra Theurgies for Akihiko, but it depends, because like Akihiko's A1, for example, or maybe it's his A2, but he has an awareness that also gives him additional Theurgy energy. And so then it's like, okay, well, you had her and you had him both at A1. They synergize really well, but one or the other, you're like losing value on the Theurgy part of the A1. So it's tough, but I think just giving that additional Theurgy up for certain characters is valuable enough, and is applicable enough in many situations for me to feel like that I have to value it as such. And that's not even considering the fact that it's another 20% pierce, or another 20% pierce like increase. And if I'm ranking all these characters that have that same pierce buff and good, and she's also giving you like maybe 1 or 2 additional Theurgies per 6-turn fight, that is strong to me. Much better than the weapon. Don't pull the weapon. Please don't pull the weapon. Speaking of Theurgy users, Akihiko has an A1 that gives him an additional Theurgy gauge increase by 70, and then he gets a 20% crit rate increase. It says when he's getting grit stacks, but he's always getting grit stacks, so it's a flat 20% increase, which is huge. I am a little concerned that it's overcapping on crit rate with all of his like buffs, so worried about that. But you can pair him with people like Turbo, who offer pierced, not crit rate buffs, so like no Wind Vast, no Beat Farm Nami. And so you wouldn't overcap, you can use other characters like that, but I'm still a little concerned about that. But man, there's no denying that getting 70 Theurgy energy is super, super important, because that allows him to use 2 Theurgies in a fight, right? Because it's, usually you need Yukari to use 2 in a fight. Now he can use 2 with A1. Maybe he could use 3 if he had a Yukari A1 and Akihiko A1, I'm not sure, but regardless, I'm pretty convinced that this is a really, really, really strong awareness. And you know, even though I think he's like his kit is complete at A0, like it's always already such a good kit, I've got to put him in strong for that reason. Next up, we've got Miku, who is a must pull. No reason to discuss it further, but we will discuss it further. And what we will say is this one is a little weird because it doesn't like not every like team is going to benefit the same way that some do from her A1, because her A1 it gives skill amplification to her, so it increases her buffing, and then it resets all the cooldown highlights, or the highlight cooldowns, and then it doubles the rate at which the highlights and the theurgies are charged, and it gives a final damage application for highlights during a virtual concert. So I look at all that and I say, anyone that's dealing big highlight damage loves this. Anyone that's dealing theurgy damage loves this. Even if you don't love highlights, if you're using a lot of like characters to buff with highlights, this is so important because it allows you to use so many additional highlights, which are some of them are so good. Like the twins, for example, you can use the twins Fire and Ice highlight possibly like three times in a rotation. And for that reason, I just see this as one of the most valuable like awarenesses for Navigator, because it's fundamentally changing the battle system, right? With the highlights and theurgies. It was meant to have like a charge up rate so you couldn't just spam it. And now you can just spam it with her A1 and it's broken. So I think it's super strong. I think it's a must pull. It's not the maybe twins level must pull, but it is really ridiculous. And some of the theory crafting on like the highlights rotations and theurgy rotations that people have done with Miku, I've been totally insane. I made a video on Makoto and getting like you can sneak in additional highlights and additional theurgies to make it to where he has like I think 6 total activations of the full moon stack at A0. It's totally insane. So that's enough of the Miku glaze. We're just gonna, accept that she's really strong, and she will get stronger because the skill amplification on her skills is not like the main problem with Miku right now is that her actual buffing numbers are pretty low compared to some other characters. But once we get that sync mindscape, and once we get the CN buffs on Miku, that 15% skill amp is actually going to matter. It's actually going to matter a lot. Next up is Beach Farm Minami, and this one is one that I made a whole video on, basically, and I, haven't changed my mind on it that much. I have said in a couple of my videos that having the additional item for healing and sustainability is actually kind of nice. There aren't really that many cases where like we can benefit from having 2 of the potent medicine effects, right? So we can't have DOT up and highlight damage up because like for example on Barry, I actually learned this just recently, Barry's DOT damage, it actually like I think all of her damage is considered continuous damage, right? So technically like our highlight damage is DOT damage, so she doesn't benefit from highlight up. But anyways, what I'm saying is that we can't use like the double special effect item up, but man, having another item to like add additional damage, add additional healing, it is nice. And then you're also getting the item effect up, which is good, and then you can use the additional items which can add an attack boost. It's actually a pretty good awareness. I think it's actually way better than not way better, but it is a little nicer to have than I gave it credit for, just for the quality of life. I think quality of life alone is carrying a lot of the weight here. Got a lot of characters in strong. We need some more mid awareness ones, but I guess we'll save that for the awareness 2 video. If you're not aware, a lot of these characters have like terrible A2s. It's like so funny how much different the A2, because I already did like a lot of it. I did like a preliminary tier list for a lot of this. Like I kind of ranked some of the characters like off the top of my head, and before like really diving in deep to it to kind of see where it was at, and oh man, it's bad. It is bad. Now, Wave Catcher Miyu is going to be good. Not great, good. And some people would say that this is a really good awareness. I actually don't think it's that good. Now, it decreases the SP cost of Catch a Wave, and then it increases your max offshore stacks, so she can activate more of those, what's it called? Like the resonance hits, and then the resonance hits deal more damage, and then it makes her big damage turn aerial tide a lot more damage. But it's not a significant amount of damage to where I'm like super impressed by it. Also, whenever you enter the surf state, you get to extend the buffs on wave character Miyu by a turn, which because you want to use that on like your first turn, usually that's not that relevant. Like maybe you make a 3-turn, maybe you might make like a 3-turn buff last 4 turns, but I'm not really sure how it would be relevant. Maybe I'm too stupid to know, but I think it's good, not great. You know, if it was crit rate or anything, that'd be fine. And because we're not actually like getting any damage buffs here, only the offshore stacks are increasing the damage. Not as impressed as I would like to admit. Wait, no. Not as impressive as I think some people would say. Alright, next up is going to be Blitz. And this will be our next character, actually. And Blitz is a character who... It's tough because she's a really niche character that already kind of struggles with competing with like twins and Beach Flower Minami and all that stuff, and has a really bad weapon and all that. And there's so many things you could say about the teacher. But what you can't say about the teacher is that her awareness sucks, because it doesn't suck. Her awareness 1 is awesome. It increases permanently when she knocks down a phone, critical damage taken by 30%. And she inflicts shock to a foe whenever she deals electric damage, which she deals electric damage a lot. And that is crazy. Like, shock is a 10% crit rate increase. So this is 30% crit damage and 10% crit rate. And unless you're already applying shock, which isn't impossible, right? It could be like doubling up on that. It is really, really, really valuable to have shock. And there are a lot of situations where I can imagine, like, for example, if you're using her with Akihiko, right? And you have, we use like Thor as like the special effect persona, because he has crit damage taken up and then crit rate up with the shock. Maybe you don't need to run Thor anymore. Maybe you can run just a more generically stronger supporter because she's applying shock with her A1. I don't know. And then I'm not going to talk about this because it's too, I don't know enough about it. It's too far in the future. But when we get it's called like Mindscape Core or Attribute Mindscape, you can inflict high voltage shock, which increases crit rate taken with by electric damage whenever it's like a special effect item. And then there's also like an effect that says electric weakness damage is increased whenever foes has 3 stacks of high voltage shock. So I look at that and I say, like, there's potential there in the future for that to be even stronger with like the shock amplification, or like the effect amplification from shock. So I'll put it in strong. That's like, I just look at that and see a lot of value there. And at worst, it's a 30% crit rate or crit damage taken increase permanently after applying break. So I really like that. I really, really, really do. Next up is our most recent character, Barry, who has a A1 that I would consider underwhelming, because what it says is you get defense down for each lovesick stack inflicted, and then you get to inflict 1 more lovesick stack on the target each time a skill is used. You might think initially like, okay, well, we get to max stacks faster, so more damage, and then defense down on lovesick, it's 3% down per stack, and it's 10 stacks, so that's 30% defense down. That's really good. A couple of problems with that. First problem, you really don't have a problem inflicting max lovesick stacks, right? You use the skill 1 and then you use the skill 2, and then boom, you're at max stacks, right? So I don't really think that you're not really getting there a turn earlier, right? If you would be able to be like, okay, we can use skill 3 on turn 2 now, that'd be really cool, right? Instead of having to like spend an extra turn for skill 2, that's fine. Problem that I'm having though is that that's not the case, and then the defense down is not affected, or sorry, the DOT damage is not affected by the defense down. So even though we get 30% defense down, not all of her damage is going to be affected by it. So it's a little more niche in that sense. So for that reason, I'm gonna put it in mid, because again, it's pretty underwhelming. It's just really, I would have liked to see, maybe it'd be like, I would say, okay, Vorpal Butterfly deals 2 more like lovesick stacks, then you'd be able to, on our guild bosses, be able to inflict max stacks immediately or whatever. I'm not really sure. Maybe I'm trolling in that is how it works, but I don't think it is. Anyways, moving on to a character that honestly, I had a hard time ranking Prism Bui. And the reason why I had a hard time ranking this is because we're entering the territory of characters I don't have as much experience with. I've played with some of these in the CN server, and I've read these characters' kits quite a lot and done some research, so I understand how this works. But this character's kit is like an essay. It is a huge essay. There's so much going on. It's so confusing for kind of no reason. And I feel like I kind of don't always understand what's going on. But anyways, the A1 itself says, start of the battle, you immediately summon 4 different vegetable knights, which there are 4 different kinds of vegetable knights, because the whole thing behind her kit is like summoning these knights, and she's dealing all-out attack damage. So she's summoning the knights. She gains max mobilized energy stacks, which she uses to trigger an all-out attack damage. Like it's a special effect that she does. So she's gonna have max stacks. Then she can trigger the all-out attack damage. For every vegetable knight she has, she gets an additional crit damage up to 40%. So 40% crit damage. Then to start the battle, she has a thing called Potato Yellow, which means that she, if I'm not mistaken, she gets an additional 15% all-out attack damage increase. And then at the start of her turn, it changes back to Eggplant Purple, which is whenever she uses using a Persona skill, gain mobilized energy. What the hell does that mean? Here's the answer. Basically, you get to use one additional all-out attack at the beginning of the fight, and it's affected by the Potato Yellow increased all-out attack damage, and she's getting an additional 40% crit rate. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is going to go in the good tier. No, strong. This is strong. I'm going to put this in the strong tier. I had to make sure I had that right. Why is this going into the strong tier? Because 40% crit rate is a lot, crit damage is a lot of buffing, and then automatically getting the one hit of the one all-out attack trigger at the beginning of the fight is really nice. It combos really well with the rest of her kit of trying to get trying to as soon as possible get the vegetable knights. I think getting that immediately and then being able to trigger it right off rip and then going onto your turn and then being able to start the rotation kind of from there. I do think that that's important. I think that that's valuable, and it's maybe I'm just looking at the 40% crit damage and going damn, that's a lot, but without playing with this character more, it's gonna be hard to say. I'm just gonna go with my gut and say it's probably good. I mean, now that we're kind of into the game's life cycle for a year, the devs have definitely figured out kind of how this works, and they've given a lot of these remaining characters some really, really strong awarenesses and really balanced, because yeah, all of these awarenesses are a lot stronger than the other characters based on numbers and based on what they do, but also I feel like a lot of the awarenesses are balanced between themselves, and that there aren't a lot of awarenesses that stick out or that'd be worse than the others. I think they kind of make it more consistent. So because for that reason, I'm gonna assume that they did this one right and that she's going in strong. Although I could be getting trolled by the devs. Who knows? Maybe they're just putting an essay in here and she's dog shit. I don't know. Anyways, let's go into our first actually good sub DPS of the game, Mitsuru Kirijo. And Mitsuru is a weird one because it's she acts as both a sub DPS and a DPS herself, because she does pretty good personal damage through the Cruel Edge, I think is what it's called. Yeah. So the way her A1 works is that it makes all of her foes at the start of the battle get 2 rhyme stacks, and these are rhyme stacks above the cap. So if you don't know what rhyme stacks are, her kit has something called Frost, which she applies, and then she uses her Theurgies, and then she changes the Frost to the Rhyme. And then the Rhyme, whenever someone attacks the foe with the Rhyme stack, Cruel Edge is activated. And Cruel Edge essentially is a follow-up attack for Mitsuru that uses the main damage dealers. It uses their original stats, so damage, crit rate, that stuff. So you buff that character, and then those buffs kind of apply to Mitsuru when she's dealing this follow-up attack. So getting 2 additional rhyme stacks is pretty cool because, you know, you get to have those like damage turns earlier. You get to have the crit rate up, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure this increases the sweeper and assassin damage through the frost debuff, because I'm pretty sure the rhyme counts as frost. I might be trolling. This might be wrong, and this is not how this works, but I'm pretty sure that the frost stacks and the rhyme stacks count for the same thing. So what that means is that we're getting just 2 bonus stacks of frost for all of her scaling on her like buffs. So that's a lot of words. Basically, it's 10% crit rate, and it's like some additional buffing. We like crit rate. It's crit rate for her. It's crit rate for the main DPS. It's good. It's a really, and she's getting additional follow-up damages, like recording the main DPS's damage and then dealing that damage again. It's good. It's really good, and I'm gonna put it in strong. Maybe I have this wrong and it isn't. Maybe it's way better than I think it is. Maybe this is like one of the best A1s in the game, but it's a strong consideration. It definitely seems like it's pretty strong. Next, C's character is going to be Fuuka. And Fuuka is another navigator who gives the same 12% crit rate that these guys do. But also, we get a little bit better of I would say, a little bit better effect of, she gains 2 bonus wish listener stacks, and then she increases the max stacks to 8. And what that means is that she can use her Oracle Shift ability, which is where she swaps in a backup character that she has. She can use it 1 turn earlier. In fact, she can use it on the first turn, which is nice because if you have a character that wants to set up, you know, a little earlier, you can use it. Now, this doesn't change how many times that she can swap in and out characters. She can only do it twice per battle under current circumstances. Although if you have characters that give extra turns or you do anything like that, you maybe could sneak in some extra ones there. But I think the answer is she's going to be strong, not must pull, because it isn't changing the actual number of swap-ins. It's still the same number of swap-ins, and it's just giving you more flexibility, but it's still giving you the 12% crit rate, which is really strong. So I'm going to put her in the strong tier with the rest of the 5-star navigator gang. The next character we're going to talk about is 5-star Luce, and he is a must pull. He just is. The reason for this is pretty simple. His A1 is like, it's kind of a book, and it is a weird scenario where he has this like buff that allows him to revive, or not revive, but he survives fatal damage 1 time, and then he can revive up to 63% of his HP, and then he can increase his attack. Now, usually, when I see characters have revival skills, usually this is on some of these Navigators A2s, I look at that and I go, I don't really see that as very valuable. Because, yeah, maybe you could live a fight, or live a hit that you wouldn't otherwise, and maybe you don't need to use a sustainer for a fight that you would have had to otherwise, but sometimes it's like, it's an artificial way to increase the value of an awareness that like doesn't actually increase damage, right? Would I rather have it to where you get to live a hit one more time or do 10% crit rate? I'd absolutely rather have 10% crit rate, right? So I look at that immediately and I go, I don't know. But Shoki works in a different way. He's spending HP to gain shield, and then he's getting Knight's Contract stacks by doing that as well. When he uses skill 3, he spends all of his Knight's Contract stacks to increase the skill damage. Now the problem is that skill 3, well, this isn't a problem, but the skill 3 has a special line of text where it says if he has 5 of those Knight stacks, he can deal bonus bless damage based on, I think it's like on a certain number of attack that is increased by 10% per Knight's Contract stack, but he needs to have 5. And so the problem is, if he's at A0, he's really not going to be able to do that. He's not going to be able to use skill 2 enough, because he would, you know, spend too much of his HP, because he has to spend the HP to gain a shield. He's not going to be able to spend enough HP to gain enough Knight's Contract stacks to max out this like 5 Knight's Blessing stacks and then deal the additional hit of damage and then increase the skill damage per those Knight's Contract stacks. So he's losing out a little bit of DPS there. Now, the A1, on the other hand, is like a completely game changer, because what this like revival clause has is a different way to use it than normally. Now it isn't just you live a hit. Now you can spend that additional like revival buff and be like, you can use skill 2 below 0 HP. So you can go into negative HPs using skill 2. And when you do that, you gain 2 more Knight's Contract stacks above the maximum limit for that turn. So what that means is that instead of you getting 2 procs of skill 2, now on whatever turn you want, so turn 5, the turn before the last big damage turn, what you get to do is you get to use skill 2 up to 4 times, because you have that, you have that like buffer zone of like going negative HP, and then you can get up to 4 Knight's Contract that way. And then A1 also says he gets 2 more Knight's Contract, so now he's at 6. So now he can do the skill 3, and he can use all those Knight's Contract stacks, all 6 of them, to deal big damage, and then he can deal the additional hit of damage, which is buffed more by the Knight's Contract stacks, and because he's going below the minimum, he is going to be increasing attack by 30% for one turn, I'm pretty sure, so it's another huge damage buff. And you thought I was done, I'm not done. He also has another effect that says the crit rate is increased by 5% when he gains Knight's Contract, stacking up to 3 times, which means he's getting 15% crit rate. That's insane. The A1 could have said get 15% crit rate, get 30% attack, and it would have been good. It is totally bonkers. It's so strong. And that's like, if you think that's like, okay, this is a bit of a tangent. All of his awarenesses are so stupid. They're so good. Like, I'm looking at this, he might have the best, like, awareness track out of anybody in the game. And I was doing the rankings, and his A2 and plus, all of them are crazy. I mean, his A4 is more mediocre than anything, but still, and his A6 is like, was the first A6 to break the damage cap. Like, it's crazy. It's totally insane. Regardless, that's enough of the Shoki yap. He's broken, whatever. And you're going to be able to do like a buy one, get one free with Shun. So he would be a really great character to get an A1 on. But speaking of Shun, or Soy, Pioneer, let's talk about him. He's got what I would consider a very mid A1. Actually, I wouldn't say mid. I'd say good. It's just 30% crit damage. That's it. And there's like another like, oh, he has a little bit more self-sustain, but like it's 30% crit damage. It's the most basic thing on a character where like I just talked all the time about how the Shoki A1 is like, it's this, you get all this crazy stuff, and then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, party crit damage 30% for Shun. Hope you like it. Like, come on, man. What are we doing? I thought we were, that's reserved for like the Miyos of the world, but like whatever. It's good. 30 crit damage is good. You know, it's fine. Maybe I should move these guys to mid now that I think about it. It's fine. A1s are generally like one of the better like awarenesses, so it's okay to have it kind of stacked. All right, next up we've got Junpei, more like Ace Defective, and his A1 is actually really good. I'm thinking I'm gonna put it in strong, and the reason for this is because he gets if you weren't aware, the way his kit works is that he has like this thing called Competitive Heart, and when he reaches a certain threshold, he gets some like different buffs that the buffs increase based on like fire damage. So like, for example, like he has 10 competitive hearts, the party gets 20% attack, but the fire damage dealt is also increased by 20%. So if you have fire damage dealers, it's more than that, right? And then like for A1, it's the same thing where it's a 20% crit buff. Well, I guess I'll just read out like, I won't read the thresholds, I'll just read the totality of the A1. It's 20% crit damage, fire sweepers and assassins get 20% more, so 40% crit damage, and then the same thing with attack. It's 40% crit damage or attack up for fire, assassins, and sweepers. So I look at that and I go, okay, 40% crit, 40% attack, that's really good. That is a really, really good rate 4 A1s, right? We're already talking here 30% crit rate, 30% crit damage, 10% crit rate. Junpei's got 40% crit damage and 40% attack, so that's strong. He's really good there. I would say, you know, A1 over weapon for this character, but we're not doing that comparison in this video. Next up, we got Pinky, and Pinky is I guess I would just say strong, like another one of these like. Oh, I'm reading the wrong list. No. Sorry, must pull. What am I doing? This is the one where Wonder gets an extra action. Narumi gains a special skill where Wonder can get an extra action at the end of his turn, and then also he restores some XP. That doesn't matter, but that skill has a 1 turn cooldown. You can use it 3 times a fight. 3 times. 3 Wonder actions, and that's like, think about it like this. I'm not even gonna assume that you're using like any of the pay to win like skills, because those are insane. Imagine you're just using like Dionysus. What if it's like 19% crit rate? That's pretty crazy, right? Like now we're looking at this and I'm going, okay, instead of it saying get another like Wonder action, which the Wonder actions do matter because, you know, he has like the special skill, and then at the end of his turn, like he's giving shiny points to Pinky. Like the setup is like supposed to be where Wonder and Pinky kind of support each other. But man, getting extra actions are already super broken, right? There's already a lot of reasons for those to be like really, really strong, right? Because of Navigators, highlights, that kind of stuff. But getting that 3 times a fight on an A1, and then also, you thought I was done. Also, she can activate all buff effects from the extra action, Spotlight Unleashed, on all actions. What does that mean? It means that, well, Wonder, just like Pinky can give Wonder an extra action, Wonder can give Pinky an extra action. And then at the end of there, usually the way it works is that there's like a specific buff effect on that extra action. Now, that extra action buff, there's like it's like a 30% attack damage increase. There's like an attack increase. I'm looking at the kit here. I don't know I haven't listed all the exact buffs, but those extra buffs now apply to all of her damage, not just on extra actions, which is great because, you know, she's got some pretty good damage numbers here. And you thought I was done. I'm not. 30% crit damage. Bang. So now it's like, okay, well, I talked about extra turns are valuable, buffs are nice, boom, 30% crit damage, must pull. Like, they really are starting to push these A1s to like an insane degree. Now, when we're talking about our next character, Koromaru, I think they finally learned to tone it down a little bit. And this one I think is just good. Let's put you here. Good, because what it says is permanently increase all allies crit damage 25%, stacks up to 2 times. And there is like there's a revival, like, or like if the owner is what they call it, if it like would die, it survives with 1 HP and then heals them a little bit, so there's like that survival thing. But the way I read this is it's 50% crit damage up. I could put that in strong. Reason why I might put that in only like an A1 instead of strong is because, like I said, it's 50% crit damage only. Additionally, like, Koromaru is kind of more of, he's kind of meant to be more like a partner with Fuuka. And so the issue, and this is like this maybe isn't super fair, but the issue that I have is that you're really going to be using Koromaru kind of on the Fuuka turns. And if Fuuka's using it on 3 and 6, or on 2 and 5, like, you're not actually getting the 50% damage increase the whole fight. You're actually only getting 25% damage increase for most of it, and then on the last couple turns you're getting 50%. Which is good, because a lot of times you want to deal the big damage on the last turns. But the problem that I have with that is that it's actually closer to, like, you know, 25% crit damage, and then also another 25% crit damage on like 1 turn. Maybe that's not fair. Maybe it's not fair for me to say that, because it's like, well, okay, if you just use Koromaru, you would just get 50% damage increase. But you don't want to use just Koromaru, because just using Koromaru by himself is just not as good as using him with Fuuka. So I don't think that makes sense, right? I just think we have to look at it in the context of that. Yeah, it's 50% crit damage, which is good. That's already kind of like borderline, right? That's already here or here, because if it was like 25 crit damage and then 15 crit rate, I'd go bang, that's strong, but it's not. So just one type of damage is not as good as two. So maybe I'm trolling. Maybe I just hate Koromaru. I hate dogs. I don't hate dogs, but maybe I am acting like I do. Next character is 5-star Motoha, 5-star closer Radiance, Radiant Arai. I don't know what they're gonna call this character, but what I do know is that her A1 is amazing. It's another must pull in my opinion. Must pull if you like the character, which I might. Who knows? We'll see. The reason for that is pretty simply it changes. So the way that she currently works at like A0 is that she can activate. She goes like. She's a couple different rotations you can use, but she has like a 3-turn rotation, then she's got more of like an off rotation that's like 2 turns, but there's like more of a gap between the 2 and the 6 turn. Anyways, it's a little weird how it works. A1 cleans it up a lot and makes it go like skill 1, highlight and skill 3. Skill 1, highlight and skill 3. Makes it a clean 2-turn rotation. It basically makes it so where you can use your highlight, which is the big damage you're trying to do. You go from using it 3 times to using it 4 times throughout the rotation, which is great. Also, she changes light and shadow stacks to flowing light. So now you're getting, I think it's like whenever you're doing the highlight damage, you get the attack boost 3 times, and you get the shield to all allies, which doesn't matter super much, honestly. But hey, I don't know, it's kind of cool. But the reason why I say that is because now all of her stuff gives her flowing light. So now it's all kind of collected into one resource pool. So she doesn't have to kind of manage multiple different like light and shadow stuff, and it cleans up the rotation a lot. It activates both, and then the trick here is when she enters Resolute Maiden, she gets an additional flowing light stack, which means that she can activate those 4 highlights instead of 3. Why am I saying this? Why is she a must pull? This seems like you're just giving her an extra highlight. Oh yeah, by the way, 15% crit rate. Boom. That's like the whole point of this video. It's like, oh, there's like a bunch of like this like changing the rotation and doing all this stuff, and then oh, by the way, 15% crit rate. Okay, yeah, that kind of makes it a must pull for me. So I would say adding those like additional highlights and then giving you the additional crit rate makes it like super strong. It lines up super well with an A6 chord if you have that. But anyways, all right, couple more left. Got our last C's character for now, which would be Aegis. Aegis is going to go into strong, and Aegis, I think, kind of has like the similar thing as these two characters, where there's like a good amount of buffing to like how her skills kind of combo with themselves, and then she also gets a 15% crit rate boost. So it's like kind of the same thing here, where it's like, okay, she activates her Theurgy, and then now she gets to use, I think, like 1 or 2 more activations of Wild Barrage and Flash Strike. So now instead of going like it's like she uses skill 1, then she uses skill 2, then she uses skill 3 automatically. Now she uses skill 1, 2, and then skill 1 again, and then skill 3 automatically. So one additional skill 1, which means that she's getting 1 additional stack of powerful rounds, which if you go read that thing, it means that she's getting another 10% skill damage on her skill, like her skill 3, which is her big damage skill. So that's nice. And then she's getting a 15% crit rate, which is nice. Don't think it's giving as much value as any of these characters are, but look, I like crit rate. I love, getting extra skill buffs, extra attacks, extra everythings. I'm liking this. It's all great. I just think it's not as good as these other ones. All right, next up, Starlight Joker, and this is a really tough one for me to like rank, because Starlight Joker is a little bit weird in the sense that he acts as a saboteur and a strategist and a sub DPS, because he is doing almighty attack, all out damages using what is called, I think, coordinated attack. Yeah, like coordinated damage, which is calculated using the highest attack of the person that's involved in the damage. So if all 4 party members are doing an all out attack, if he is the one dealing the most damage, then someone else is gonna be like dealing the most damage, like the main DPS, they are going to like increase the attack of the thing a lot more. Like it's a little weird how it works, but it's weird because he acts not because like he was meant to be like, okay, he can be a buffer or a debuffer, but he also deals a ton of damage through the attacks. He's just a really amazing character. He's kind of like, you know, like a new version of the twins almost, right? We'll have him in the debuff category for now. I'm debating on where to put this skill 1 because it's really good because Fever Time, which is his special skill, restores an additional Rhapsodic Beat, which Rhapsodic Beat is a special, like, it's a special resource that all of these Starlight characters have access to. And so it's not just benefiting Joker, it's also benefiting, like, you know, Starlight On, Starlight Morgana. All the Starlight characters are going to have this shared resource where they can all use it. Now, the level to which these characters can utilize Rhapsodic Beat, it's debatable. And even if we don't consider that, Rhapsodic Beat it increases the effectiveness of Phantom Gala, which is mostly where this is like going to be applicable. I don't really think you're going to be like talking about this Rhapsodic Beat stack like it's something that you're going to be using to buff like Starlight On, for example. It's usually mostly like he's going to use it to buff his own Phantom Gala, which is which is his skill 3, which deals a lot of like almighty attack damage in terms of like a coordinated damage. So that's where he's doing like the sub DPS form. And then by having the 2 beats, he's gonna have, you know, an increased damage multiplier, increased coordination damage multiplier, like to a huge number. Like we're talking 300% multiplier. So a lot of coordinated damage up, which means a lot of sub DPS potential there. Additionally, whenever he's using Fever Time, he increases his personal crit rate, and then he increases all of the allies' crit damage by 50%. So a 50% crit damage to all allies, plus having the additional modifier for the coordinated attack, plus the 20% crit rate to himself. Now this is what I'm confused about. I don't know how valuable the 20% personal crit rate is. I think it's really valuable. I think that's actually going to matter because the coordinated strike converts crit rate and damage into final damage bonus. So having a lot of crit rate on Joker, who activates it, is going to increase the damage from the coordinated strike. Because the way it works is coordinated strike is damage using values from Joker, and coordinated damage is damage from the highest attacker other character unit that isn't Joker. So by having personal crit rate increased and party crit rate increased, he's doing higher coordinated damage, higher coordinated strike damage. He's dealing, I think, like his sub DPS capabilities are really greatly increased. Plus, just having that crit rate damage up is huge. It's so big. And then also, like I said, there's a chance that Rhapsodic Beat is really important when he's using like, I don't know, Starlight On buffing. I'm not sure. So that's the spiel. I don't really know how this works. I'm not as privy to it. I haven't played since this patch, the 5-star closer patch, so I haven't messed around with him as much. I'm pretty sure this is an amazing A1. I'm gonna put him in must pull. If you want to correct me in the comments, I would love for you to do that. I'd love for you to say, hey, actually, it's not as good as you think it is. I'm totally willing to take the L on that one. Speaking of Starlight characters, our next dancing character is Morgana. And Morgana has, I don't know, good A1? It's good or strong? I might put it in strong because it's a 30% crit damage up, which is good, and it's permanent, which is nice. And he's also automatically activating his skill 1. So he goes skill 1, then skill 2, then he goes skill 3 into that afterwards. And so what it's doing is it's allowing you to get max debuffs on the enemy quicker. You don't have to wait till skill 3 to start doing the Whirlwind Waltz, which is where he's doing a lot of like his best debuffing. So it's speeding up his rotation, it's giving you crit damage, and I think that makes it worthy of a strong, right? Just the way that when these characters, like, it's the same thing with Yukari, where speeding up the rotation allows the buffs to come into play faster. It allows like different, you know, modifiers to be in play. And then again, just having crit damage is very nice. 30% is a really good number. So put him in strong. Could be swayed into good, but it's definitely not a bad awareness. Not bad in the slightest. Next up, we've got Starlight On. And Starlight On is going to go into strong. This one is pretty interesting because it kind of changes how she plays, but it's not like... It's a little weird because her whole spiel... I'm saying that word too much now. Her whole thing is that she like combines different attacks into one big attack. And her A1 increases her SP to 400 and then increases the SP gain. And then she also gets a 30% crit damage on her attacks, basically. So it's basically 30% crit damage, and then she can use more attacks into her big attacks. And that's really good. That's really important. I don't think it's like... I don't know how important it is because she can use a lot more like attacks. She can squeeze more attacks into one big damage turn, kind of towards the end, rather than like an A0. But I don't know if it's like a level that's so insane that it's like must pull, right? Because 30% crit damage is not as big as some of the other buffs that they're getting. 400 SP is nice, but it's not like the increase isn't, you know, changing the game to a degree where it's like you couldn't live without it. So strong, not must pull. Close. Definitely close though. Next character is going to be Summer Chord, our newest character at CN, and this one is very recent, so there's a lot of, there's a lot of things to cover here of like trying to... It's not like widely known how insane that the awarenesses are. Still, the jury's still out on that, I think, but the way it works generally is whenever an ally uses a highlight, she activates one of her like Summer Starscapes, which is something that will activate her resonance damage, which is where she deals all of her damage. She gets 100% skill damage modifier on that Summer Starscape on the additional one, and then after she activates it, she gets crit damage up by 5% 2 turns, sex up to 6 times. What does that mean? It basically means 30% crit damage, and then she's getting additional hits of the resonance damage. I think this is good. I don't know if this is broken. This is like really that strong. I think the reason why this is good, not great, is because 30% crit damage is awesome. Don't get me wrong. But the additional Summer Starscapes that she's getting is not as good because she is activating allies' highlights through her own kind of system. It's kind of separate from like the normal highlight system. So every turn she's kind of doing that. But I think the problem is that she's only getting one of these additional like resonance hits every other turn. So that's 3 additional of these resonance hits. Not really sure how much value that adds, especially considering that like a lot of her damage comes from like skills, the resonance hits, and she's also doing stuff from skill 3 where she's spending like these Star Wish stacks, which she gets when she is spending highlight energy, and then she's using that to increase that skill's damage. Where these additional Summer Starscape hits that she's doing, they have a separate skill damage modifier that isn't getting increased there, so I don't think it's as valuable. Could be wrong. Maybe the reason why I'm thinking this is wrong because like I'm looking ahead to her A2, which is a lot, well, I'll spoil, is a lot better. But I think it's still fine. I think it's still good. I guess maybe I just needed to stop putting so many people in must pull and just start putting people into good as well. So I think it's good, not must pull. But that's gonna do it for the tier list for the A1 strength, value, must pull characters, kind of whatever you want to call it. This is my final list. Most of the A1s, as you can see, are relatively good. Most characters have an A1 that's like, you could pull it if you liked them, right? I'd say these are characters I'd really think about before I invested. These are characters that if you liked them, go ahead, all power to you. These are characters that if you like them, you should pull them, or if you care about score chasing meta, they're good pulls for that reason. And these are characters that there are a lot of good reasons to pull, or a lot of they're very strong awarenesses over their next kind of replacement level thing. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree, because I'm sure there are people that are like, oh, well, you ranked one character too high, one character not high enough. I'm sure that's the case. Again, don't treat it like it's a tier list, but I think that's going to be it for me today. I'm going to try and get the A2 video out relatively soon. I don't want this to take like forever for me to make all these videos and then upload them. So I'll get the A2 one out. Hopefully now that we kind of understand the methodology, we can maybe speed up the process a little bit more. And some of the later ones will be a little shorter. The A6 video might take a long time because those A6s are complicated and they're hard to talk about. But and we've got a lot of characters to go through, just a lot. So hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what y'all think down in the comments. And until the A2 video, I'll see y'all later.